Hi everyone, and a very warm welcome back to the channel. Now in today's video we're going to cast the verdict on Rage 2. So this is only my second review ever of any game that's ever existed on the face of this earth. However, please do bear with me, it is going to be rough around the edges, it's going to be just, drivel here and there like this segment now, and it's not going to have the smooth nature of an ACG video or even one by Worth to Buy. But let's delve deeper into the game here. So Rage 2 is a post-apocalyptic open-world first-person shooter developed by Avalanche Studios, but with creative oversight from id Software. id Software, of course, were the guys behind the original Rage game, which had its own technical issues when it first launched, but was a fairly decent game. It was a little bit too short, but its gritty post-apocalyptic world was something that I was yearning for at the time. It was actually something I was hoping Fallout was moving towards, but unfortunately we got Fallout 4, and that kind of fell a bit flat of that dream. Rage 2 is of course available on pretty much every platform. You've got your PlayStation 4, your Xbox Ones, and of course what I'm reviewing on, the PC. And of course playing here in ultra wide as I do many of the games on the PC. It'd be stupid not to, being I've got an ultra wide monitor. So now let's dive deeper into the game, and first up, as always, is graphics.
Holy shit! It took his whole head off.
Now we always delve into graphics first because it's the first thing you see when you start playing the game. It's inescapable, and it's how generally you build your first impressions of the game. Unfortunately, Rage 2's graphics could be better. They're not great, they're very much in the okay band, and they feel like a massive downgrade from the likes of Prey or Doom. Now I know those games are very different, and maybe they produced the graphic fidelity in Rage to allow it to have better performance in this big open world. But other games such as The Witcher 3 just don't have to do that. Witcher 3 has great performance, great graphic fidelity, and it's a massive open world game. So I would have thought in the life cycle as well of Apex, the Apex engine, Avalanche's graphical engine, that they would have been able to push it that little extra here and make a very good looking game. Unfortunately, the character models look rough around the edges, the animations are very janky to say the least, and the overall tone and theme just doesn't match the original game. And that massive disparity that the two games have just detaches me from the world of Rage, which is a shame because, like I said at the start, I enjoyed the first game and I was hoping very much for just the next chapter in this world. The best thing that can be said about Rage 2's graphics, though, is the amount of settings that you get on PC. It's great to see that this is finally becoming more of the routine with these console-type ports, especially from Bethesda. They did the same thing with Wolfenstein, believe it or not, and also with many other of their games. Since the release of Fallout 4, where they didn't really have that host of settings, things have changed drastically. And this may be because of the different engines that are involved here. It's not obviously the creation kit. It is the Apex engine, Avalanche's own engine. And the amount of settings that you have is it's overwhelming, actually, to be honest with you, to start off with. I've not seen this range of settings in a long time, on any other PC game, really. And it was great to see, especially when you can do things like tweaking the HUD and removing it completely or removing certain elements. I like to play with a very minimal HUD. I have done ever since Skyrim, when you can mod it and turn things off. Playing with a minimal HUD just really emphasises and immerses, dare I say it, immersion, into the experience of the game. And it's great that this has been included in Rage 2, and is by far the best thing that can be said about the graphics. I'm by no means saying that the graphics make this game a bad game. I'm just saying they add to some of the other issues that this game has and brings down that level of polish somewhat. Moving on from graphics then, let's talk about performance. Now, if graphics aren't your thing and you're not really fussed whether the graphics are superbly amazing, ultra realistic, the performance will definitely concern you, because if the game doesn't run well, it doesn't matter what it looks like. Luckily for Rage 2, performance is spot on. I maintain 60 FPS pretty much all the time. I know some people like to play higher now at like 120 or something, or 100 FPS, but for me, 60 FPS on my monitor, the ultra wide with the 1080 Ti, no flaws whatsoever, no stutters, no micro stutters. It just felt smooth the whole time. And that's great, because I was worried that with the technical looking downgrade that I was feeling from the graphics, I'm glad that the performance overall was pretty decent. One thing I'd like to interject here is, although there is a ton of settings, don't feel like that is going to overwhelm you and you're going to spend 1,000 hours just tweaking things to get the performance that you want. You won't have to. And there's also one neat little feature that they have in the settings which goes a long way to just easily giving you great performance, is the resolution downscaler. Now I've seen the same sort of thing in Rainbow Six Siege as well, and it's basically just a scaler bar which you can put on the resolution that you want, tweak all the settings that you want, and then just use that scaler bar to scale the actual resolution that's being presented to you. Of course, this will affect the graphical fidelity and make things maybe look a little bit blurrier than they would be if you're playing at your full resolution, but it's a quick and easy way of getting the performance that you desire. Like many of the other aspects in Rage 2, the sound, the music and the voice is a little bit weak. I keep rubbing my hands, by the way, that's the sound that you're hearing, and I'm sorry, but it's something I just do when I'm talking, so I really do apologise for that. Hopefully the game sound and everything that's in the background here will kind of minimise that. I'm digressing again. It's the sound, music and voice in Rage 2. I just clapped then as well. Why did I do that? Anyway, it's okay. Like the rest of the game, it is simply okay. Kind of gave away the verdict there, but yeah, it's okay. It doesn't feel as good, actually, in my personal opinion, as good as Rage 1. The weapons especially feel very flat, and it all comes down to you don't really get that many of them. There are obviously several different types of weapon in terms of pistol, machine guns, submachine guns, etc, etc, but they all feel very soft in their sounds. They don't seem to have the power that you would expect from that sort of weapon retrospectively. And for me, that kind of brings me out of the immersion and doesn't really make it feel like I'm actually in control of what I'm doing. It makes me kind of a third party to what's going on, which, you know, I am, but I would like to feel like I am the first party involved. The game has some pretty decent musical tracks that fit the theme really well. However, they've not been presented or implemented in the best way. For example, combat music is very jarring and plays at random times as well. When you're just driving past enemies, combat music will come on and it just throws me out of the game. And it's not what I like from my games. I understand that the need is there for, you know, the quiet exploring music, the combat music. You need those elements in there to kind of enhance the feedback from the game. But when it doesn't really hit the mark there, it does completely the opposite, and you need to get those things on point. You can't just have a track start midway through in a harsh, harsh sound. Combat isn't like that either. Yes, your adrenaline flares up, but there's always that little bit of a build-up, and I don't get that from Rage 2. It just throws this stuff at you and all these sensory elements, and it's not my sort of game, I guess, from that respect, which is why I just don't agree with its presentation, and for me, kind of just degrades the overall package, especially when the voice isn't done as well, and there's enemies trying to speak over the top of this combat music, and to be quite honest, what they're saying would be more involving than the music that's playing. It's just falls apart very quickly.
Ranger, there are 2 switches in total. You gotta flip them both.
So despite all that, which actually sounds quite negative now I've gone back and listened to it, the gameplay is actually pretty good. It's where the game shines. Unfortunately, there are several aspects of the gameplay which diminish it, but in terms of the combat, the gameplay is spot on. Imagine Doom, but in an open world scenario, which is, I feel, what they tried to do. They tried to take what they learned from Doom 2016, which is a very successful game and a very good game, and bring that into a bigger open world. Unfortunately, what that does is it makes you feel like every interaction that you have is inside of a box. There are interactions you can have around the open world in terms of the convoys you can attack, races, and general just random encounters. But when it comes down to actually doing missions and actually going out to some of the arcs, etc., it really feels like you're trapped inside of a box. And it really, for me, diminishes from the open world, because going between these boxes is very bland, boring, and lifeless, and there just needs to be more of these random encounters. There aren't that many interesting NPCs that you can just come upon. They all seem to be main characters as such. There's not that many expanding alternate storylines or alternate side quests. It all seems to be traveling from point to point to point to be involved in the game. The game just doesn't envelop you the whole time. You are very much just a traveller between certain pubs, and you're going to each pub and drinking in the pub, and there's nothing happening in between. Don't know why I brought up pubs, maybe because I'm a little bit thirsty at this time. And this is pretty much one of the flaws of the first game. That was even more of a box-to-box scenario. It felt like you were going into, and it wasn't just box-to-box either, actually. It was travelling back to the same box to do pretty much the same thing, but from a different entry point. And it's what the first game fell short of, and so they decided to do it again for the second game. It just feels like they've not learned any lessons between Rage and Rage 2, which is a shame, because they had a massive opportunity here to really get their hooks into that Borderlands player base. Yes, Borderlands 3 is coming out later this year, and they could have really worked upon that and made something pretty special here if they just included more random encounters. And I know that Bethesda didn't develop this game and they kind of had oversight as a publisher, but I just wish that they somehow brought in their knowledge from games like Oblivion and Skyrim and put some more of those random encounters in here. And I think that may have tied things off a little nicer. Maybe there needs to be rework of the map as well. It's a bit too large, I guess, for this type of gameplay of going from box to box. It needs to be tighter, it needs to be more refined. Maybe more like a Witcher 3 sort of map where you've got these little villages in between and things just flow a bit better. That's what the game lacks. It lacks flow and it lacks cohesion. It's a shame, but if you're just in there for the if you're just in there for the combat, then you're going to have a good time. If that's all you're concerned about is going from point A to point B and fighting a ton of enemies and just feeling overpowered, feeling like the boss, then this is definitely something that is going to make the game very appealable to you. For me though, I'd need all of the other elements to come together at the same time, and it's not my sort of combat to have that overarching effect on me. I need everything to come together at once. So I need that open world experience. The actual thing that I'm going for with Rage 2, the thing I'm looking for, is a good open world experience. The combat is actually second to that to me. Yes, the combat is good, but I just need the world to feel alive. And that is why I play open world RPGs. To have that world. It's as simple as that. If you're going to make an open world game, your key focus needs to be on the world and the combat second. CD Projekt Red, they learned a big lesson between The Witcher and The Witcher 2 to actually give you this massive interactive open world in The Witcher 3. The Witcher 2 is actually kind of like this box-to-box scenario. You were put in a small region of the map to actually do several missions in before you moved on to the next one. It's similar to this, but not quite the same. And then The Witcher 3, they just expanded it massively to give you a big world to explore, but then also connect the dots with interactive things in between. The other thing that stops the flow of this game is the driving mechanics. They're pretty terrible, which is surprising being this game is developed by Avalanche Studios, who also made Mad Max, which had pretty decent driving mechanics in it. Now, one of the reasons why the mechanics feel pretty bad to start off with is because you can actually upgrade your vehicle, you can get different vehicles, they all handle differently. But to start off with, it's very, very bad, and you don't feel the need to do these upgrades because you're not enjoying that experience. If you would enjoy the driving to start off with, you might think, oh, actually, you know what, I'll just put a bit extra speed in here, I'll just tighten up the handling of this car, or get a different vehicle, actually, to see what that's like. But you don't feel that you want to do that because it's that poor to start off with. And again, that stops the flow. Okay, so finally the verdict. Is Rage 2 any good? And I have to say no. Not that it's a bad game, not that it's a terrible game, and not that it's a good or great. It's very much milling of the ground. All of its components combined, it's great combat, it's okay graphics, and it's very terrible implementation of an open world make it an okay game. It's very in the middle of everything. But if they just tweaked a couple of things here and there, they could have made it a good or great game. The main thing, of course, is the open world. I keep mentioning it time and time again. It needs to flow. It needs to have these interactions dotted around it. It needs to feel alive. It needs to feel like a world. And it just doesn't do that. And I feel very much that they had this line in the sand that said, good enough. And they basically developed the game, put features in, made it, tweaked a few things here and there, hit that line, hit that good enough line, and said, we're done. That's it. Out the door it goes. We're finished. And I just feel if they just pushed themselves a little bit more, worked a lot more on the open world, then we could have had a really great game here that could have challenged the likes of Borderlands. Borderlands 3 is going to blow Rage out the water. I know they're complete different games, complete different themes, but they have a very similar style now, especially with Rage 2 adding all this colour in that wasn't in the first game. It feels very much they've tried to pander towards those Borderlands players. And if they're going to do that, there's something that Borderlands does very well. It too has this box-to-box scenario between combat, but its open world bits have more in them. It has more entertainment value within that open world. It makes you want to explore it. Rage 2 actually has quite a few hidden things around the map that you can go into, especially like the tunnels underground and things, but I never felt the need to actually seek those out because getting there was just boring, mind-numbing even. So that is the problem with Rage 2, the open world. In terms of the overall verdict, Rage 2 is okay. Don't waste your money, don't waste your time, unless you really, really, really want to play Doom in an open world. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, please do drop it a like, and please do put comments down below of what bits you didn't like about the video and what bits you do like. Let's start a discussion of stuff down there. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll see you in the next one.
Swamp City. Let's see if I can find anything about Dr. Kvasir here.